Some people think tarot works because the cards are magical. Others think they're evil, or they channel lower vibrational messages from the beings in the astral realm. The truth is, none of those explanations are actually how tarot works, and those misunderstandings are why a lot of people don't trust tarot or have mixed experiences with it. So in this video, I want to explain how tarot really works, what's actually happening during a reading, and why it can often feel uncannily accurate, even for people who don't believe in it. Hi, I'm Karen from Soul Driven Tarot. This channel is all about practical, grounded tarot guidance for spiritual growth. No predictions, no hype, just insight you can actually use in your real life. This video is for anyone who's curious about tarot, unsure whether it's real, worried it might be a dangerous gimmick, or confused about why some readings feel incredibly accurate while others fall completely flat. So let's talk about the truth of how tarot actually works in a grounded, practical way without dumbing it down. In this video, I'm going to explain how tarot does and doesn't work, what kinds of tarot readings don't work, what's actually affecting the accuracy of a reading, and what tarot is genuinely useful for versus what it isn't, because this is not a tool for every single question. By the end of this video, you'll understand tarot well enough to stop guessing how it works and decide whether it's a tool that actually makes sense for you. Before we talk about how tarot actually works, we need to clear up a few common misunderstandings. The cards themselves are not magical. They don't carry energy and they don't know anything. They are simply a deck of 78 cards with pictures on them. That's it. Nothing more, nothing less. They are literally no different from a deck of playing cards. And yes, people do use playing cards to do readings with. It's just a different way of working. Tarot also isn't about channeling messages from external beings, nor is it about predicting a fixed, predetermined future. There is no future in that sense. Everything happens in the present moment. What we call the future is simply the most likely thing to occur next, based on what's happening now. So if you don't like the most probable outcome, change what you're doing now, and chances are what's most likely to happen next will also change. Nothing is fixed. These common myths typically come from fear, misunderstanding, or from people trying to make themselves seem mystical and powerful. Once you clear up the fear that tarot is some kind of inexplicable magic that can affect you, or a tool that predicts absolute unchangeable futures, the whole thing starts to make a lot more sense. Tarot isn't some magical thing. It's just a consciousness tool, one that helps prompt people into using their own divine intuition. So if the cards themselves aren't doing anything, how does tarot actually work? Well, tarot works by acting as a prompt to help you bring through messages from your higher self. The cards are like a fire starter for your intuition. Each card has a fairly wide collection of possible meanings, so it can narrow things down a bit for the reader, which allows their intuition to jump into gear and bring the entire message through from their higher self. This is why the reader is the one who has to shuffle the cards, because the shuffling isn't random. Your higher self tells you when to stop shuffling, because it's guiding which cards will be placed in front of you in which order, so your intuition can bring the correct answer into your mind. The collection of possible meanings for each card is what gives your conscious mind the permission to accept the answers coming through instead of rejecting them as a figment of your imagination. The relationship between the cards and the different positions in the spreads that are used also give your intuition a structure to work with that helps it refine and trust the message. This is why different cards can bring different readers the exact same message. It's all about how their intuition is best prompted. This is why you can't reliably read cards that somebody else has dealt. Your intuition mostly communicates in words, feelings, images, and knowings. When you get yourself on the right track and allow the message to come through, it's a very visceral feeling when it's correct. There's no questioning it. You know deep down when you have it right. So tarot isn't about the cards telling you something new. It's about the cards helping you hear what you already know at a deeper level. That's why tarot often tells you things you already know on some level, but haven't fully admitted to yourself yet. Since tarot works by prompting the reader's intuition, what types of readings does that mean won't work? Well, it basically rules out tarot readings where the card meanings are simply recited or read from a book, because this doesn't engage the intuition. And if tarot worked that way, anyone who'd memorized card meanings would be a great reader, and we all know that just isn't what happens in real life. The collection of meanings for each card aren't the message itself either. They're simply the space the message lives inside, which gives the intuition some focus to work with. That's why answers don't fall outside of that space either. Cards aren't just open to any meaning under the sun. The general meaning helps focus the reader's intuition. It doesn't replace it. Without that narrowed collection of possible meanings, the cards aren't actually serving their purpose as intuition prompts, so the reader might as well put the deck away and give a straight psychic reading instead. Occasionally, a card will come up in a reading, and you'll suddenly notice a tiny detail you've never paid attention to before. A direction someone is facing, a colour, an expression, the feeling of light coming through a window, and so on. This detail can then become the entire message for that one specific card, even if it doesn't appear in the traditional meanings for the card, but it's still anchored to that specific card. That's intuition responding in real time. Secondly, this is also why AI-generated tarot readings are fundamentally limited. AI can recombine meanings and patterns from existing information, but it isn't accessing intuition or universal consciousness because it doesn't have a higher self. It's effectively reading the meanings from a book. It's just doing it much faster and more eloquently. It can sound insightful, but it's missing the living, intuitive part that makes tarot work in the first place. Tarot isn't about extracting information about the cards. It's about using the cards as a doorway so your intuition can speak clearly. Once you understand this, it becomes clear why the reader's skill and intuitive connection are vital for an accurate reading. People do have mixed experiences with tarot. Some readings are accurate and some aren't. This comes down to the clarity of the reader's intuition, as well as the reader's skill level at ensuring they have the correct cards coming up in each reading. Once you know you have the right cards, accuracy comes from the clarity of the reader's intuition. If a reader has a lot of emotional baggage or a fear of telling someone something they don't want to hear, that noise interferes with the signal. Their intuition is still being used, but it's now being filtered through their personal bias. When this happens, readings start to feel vague, inconsistent, or untrue instead of clear. On the other hand, when a reader has done a lot of inner work and knows how to step out of the way, the message can come through much more cleanly, not because they're special, but because there's less stuff getting in the way. The best tarot readers will always validate their cards just in case something went wrong in the shuffling process. If the verification card doesn't tie up with what the client is telling the reader, then why would any of the other cards be correct? To put it bluntly, they wouldn't. And when you have random cards, you can't get inaccurate information coming through. This is why the cards should always be validated before they're read. Tarot is a cooperative process. It works best when both the reader and the client are open, grounded, and willing to hear the truth. The reader has their connection to their intuition, and the client knows what's going on with the situation. In order to validate the cards, you need both of these things. If the client's defensive, closed, testing the reader, or emotionally attached to a specific outcome, their resistance can affect the reading. Feedback from the client telling the reader what is resonating and what isn't during the validation stage especially can ensure the cards are the correct ones, which can make all the difference between the rest of the reading being accurate or not. Another aspect that affects the amount of detail that can be provided is the depth of experience the reader has around the subject. If you're wanting information, say, on a business issue, you need to find a reader who actually understands business, or they won't have the right words to explain what their intuition is telling them. At the end of the day, reading accuracy comes down firstly to the clarity of the reader's intuition And secondly, the depth of knowledge on the topic so they can express the message. The higher vibration and more knowledgeable the reader is, the more accurate the reading. Now you largely know how tarot works. The question is, what can you best use it for, and when isn't it the right tool for the job? The first thing to consider is the better question, the better the answer. If you start with a super vague question, the answer will come back super vague. Forming of the exact question is down to the reader, but as a client, you want to come with ideas of things you want clarity around. So what kind of questions work with tarot? Well, tarot works great for when you want to know what's going on with the situation. For example, people often come for a reading when they feel like something has shifted in their relationship. Something feels off and they can't quite put their finger on it. Others come when they're thinking about making a change in their business, like adding a new service. They want to understand how that's likely to unfold, what might influence it, what they're not seeing yet. And a lot of people come simply wanting clarity on their spiritual growth, especially when they feel stuck, disconnected, or unsure what their next step actually is. Tarot is also really helpful when you're trying to choose between a number of options. People come for a reading when they're weighing two or more paths and want clarity on which one will work better for them at the moment. For instance, someone might be deciding between two different directions in their life or business, like opening a new branch and not knowing which location will be a better fit, and they want to understand what each option brings with it. Tarot is also very effective when someone wants guidance on how to move forward and actually do something rather than just understand a situation. People come for a reading when they know they want to change, but they're not sure what the next step looks like or whether they'll have the support to do it. This can be around all sorts of things like personal growth, relationships, work, business. They just want clarity around what to focus on, what needs to shift, what steps will actually help them get there. Essentially, tarot is very good at showing you why something is happening, what's influencing it, what you're not seeing yet, how to do something, and what needs to change in order for something different to unfold. Where tarot doesn't work particularly well is with precise timing questions. There isn't really time information baked into the tarot in the way people often want it. You can usually see whether something is moving quickly, slowly, building momentum, completely stalled. You can see whether an action is required, whether something needs to be released first, or something is waiting is actually part of the process. But it really doesn't work well for questions like, when will such and such happen? Tarot is far better used to help you work out what's influencing a situation, discover how to do something, to help you make a decision you're struggling with perhaps, or what direction things are likely to move in if nothing changes, and so on. Once you have that clarity, you're in a much better position to move forward, knowing you now have all the information. So rather than using tarot as a fortune teller tool, use it to get clarity on whatever you're going through. When it's used that way, it's incredibly powerful at helping you level up. If you've been curious about tarot readings, but unsure whether they're actually for you, I hope this gave you clarity. And if you want to experience how this works in your own life, I offer private tarot readings focused on insight, getting clarity over a situation, and aligned next steps. There's a link in the description below if you want to explore that. I specialize in spiritual growth and business readings for spiritual entrepreneurs. I'm Karen from Soul Driven Tarot, and I'll see you in the next video.